The Untouchable True School Sports Empire proudly presents something the boxing game's been missing. Hey, what's going on? It's your boy BT, and I came here to talk some boxing with the thousands of True School Sports subscribers. Now, this is another installment in our long-famed historical prospect review series. And, I love doing these because it's fun to see how these videos age over time. It's fun to talk about these fighters because these are all the fighters to talk about in these videos. These are all fighters that are not on the tip of everybody's tongues right now, but they could be, and they might very well be big factors in boxing down the road. So these are always fun subjects to talk about for me here on True School Sports. And in today's prospect review series, we're going to talk about a welterweight prospect. Yes, a welterweight prospect that maybe you guys haven't been too familiar with over the years, and that's a fighter by the name of Pistol Pete Dobson, 14-0, 9 KOs, coming to you live and direct from the Bronx, New York. BX, salute, shout out to the Bronx. Pete is a very experienced fighter. Even though he's 14-0, he's already in his 30s. He's looking to get his career on track. And it looks like he's on the way towards doing that. He like many fighters in boxing have been part of bad promotional situations and had their careers delayed because of bad contracts. So he lost 2 years out the ring, and he's had a slew of fights this calendar year. And we'll get to that in a second. But let's talk about Pistol Pete Dobson. Let's talk about who has Pete Dobson been in the gym with, who has he been in the ring with, what's his style, all that good stuff, and where's his career at now. Okay, so let's start with who has he been in the ring with, who has he sparred with. We'll start with the sparring partners. Now, when it comes to the resume, the sparring resume of Pistol Pete Dobson, he's been in there with the who's who of fighters in boxing. A couple of names just to drop on you. He was one of Jerron Ennis's main sparring partners at one point in time. He's been in Camp of Boots. And from what I was told from Pete, I'm not going to divulge too much information, but from what I was told from Pete, I heard he did very good against Jerron Ennis and more than held his own in sparring. He was also in camp with one of the pound-for-pound best fighters there is in the world, Terrence Bud Crawford. So he's one of the guys responsible for helping Bud get sharp. And when you watch Pete fight and you watch him spar, you see the composure. You can see the pro style. You can see the professional traits. You can see that he's always thinking. He understands his distance. He understands when to slip shots, when to roll punches, things like that. And it comes from that. All that stuff comes from being in the gym with guys like this. Also, Adrian Broner. On this channel, I actually recorded part of a sparring session with Robert Duran Jr., another prospect. It was great work. It was some of the best sparring I've seen in person. You can go watch that sparring session and get an idea of what kind of fighter he is. I'll drop the link to that, and I'll pin it in the comments down below. So don't you guys worry about that. So yeah, very experienced in the gym. When it comes to the amateurs, I couldn't get too much amateur information on him. I didn't look that deeply, to be honest. But one name that I did pick up on his amateur resume that he did fight was Golden Boy Promotions prospect George Rincon. In 2013, he lost that fight to George Rincon. But anybody who knows anything about the amateur boxing scene in America, particularly in Texas, knows that George Rincon was like a superstar of the Texas amateur boxing scene. I had a friend in Texas tell me that when Earl Spence and the Charlos were in the amateurs along with George Rincon, it was George Rincon that got all the attention in the amateur tournament. So it's not really a crime to lose to George Rincon in the amateurs. He was a very good amateur, but and also a good fighter as well in the pros. As far as his resume, who has he beaten in his career thus far? There's two wins on Pete's resume that stick out to me because I really follow boxing. 2 years ago, he fought on the Manny Pacquiao Thurman undercard, and he fought an undefeated fighter named Emmanuel Medina, who was 16-0. He beat him. That was a good win for him. And then before that, he actually won the WBC US NBC silver title, which is like one of these random trinkets, but it's a good regional belt to have. And he beat a fighter that I'm also familiar with named Jeremy J. Flash Nichols. And I've seen him spar in Vegas. Jeremy Nichols is a slick southpaw, hard style to deal with. I actually saw him spar Caleb Plant a number of years ago, and that was really good work. So Jeremy J. Flash Nichols is definitely a good fighter to be fighting early in your career and getting a win against. And he was the first guy to beat him, so that kind of shows you the level that Pete is at, because Nichols is a solid, competent, professional fighter. and he was the first guy to beat him. So good wins early in his career, and I feel like those are the kind of wins that are going to be the precursor to bigger things in the future. Now, I mentioned earlier in the video about how Pete had a bad contract. He didn't box for like 2 years. His last fight before 2021 was on that Pacquiao-Thurman undercard. So he finally, he took himself from New York. He got out of New York. He moved himself down to South Florida, and he started training with Jeff Porritz and the fine folks over at Beta Bay Boxing Gym. And that's where he's made his home, Beta Bay Boxing Gym, Hollywood, Florida. Under the watchfly of Jeff Porritz, who's quickly becoming one of the better trainers out there in the sport. They've seemed to develop some good chemistry as fighter and trainer, and they've gotten Pete very active over the last year. He's fought 3 times, he's boxed 3 times in this calendar year. He's scheduled to box a 4th time later on in the year. So it's good stuff for Pete, to see him getting active, and I really think that his time is coming. I'm not going to make any bold predictions, but I wouldn't be surprised that if next year, let's say at this time next year, I think Pete Dobson will get the call for a big fight in the welterweight division. I could see him in there mixing it up with the guys like, Jaron Ennis and Virgil Ortiz and Rashidi Ellis and Conor Ben and guys like that. He's definitely, I think, one of these fighters you could classify as a diamond in the rough. Pete doesn't have the flashy hand speed, and I don't think he's the hardest puncher. But I kind of feel like when I watch him fight, he has this Andre Ward quality to him, to where he can adjust the styles in the ring. He knows his punching range. He does a lot of things very good, but I don't think he does anything particularly great. But he's a very well-rounded, very well-balanced fighter, and a guy like that is hard to beat. We saw in the pros. I mentioned Andre Ward. We saw when Andre Ward was perfect when he was fighting. He was a hard guy to beat because of the fact that he was able to adjust, make these adjustments, but it wasn't always flashy. It wasn't always pretty. But you bet your ass and you bet your bottom dollar that it was effective. And when I watch Pete fight, it's the same thing. I've seen him spar in the gym sometimes, and sometimes on the front foot, and he's an offensive fighter. You watch him in his fights, and you see him showing some defensive ability, being able to pivot and shift and slip out the way. There's been some times where I've seen him become a slugger in his fights and in sparring. So Pete has a little bit of everything, and I think he's going to be a tough code to crack. And I have high hopes for him. I'm hoping the boxing business doesn't do him wrong and he gets a chance to prove himself on a big stage, because I truly think, is he boxing's best kept secret? I'm not so sure if he's the best kept secret, but he's definitely a secret, and he's definitely someone that we're gonna have to look out for in this welterweight division, because he's someone that's been in there with all everybody's favorite welterweight, and he's done more than held his own with all of them in sparring. And you can see when you watch him fight, when you watch him spar, the kind of talent and the quality he possesses. So I think Pete Dobson is going to be up there very, very soon with the top 10, top 15 welterweights in the world, knocking on the door of big fights and world title opportunities, because he's active, he's going to be match fit, and I think at some point he'll get the call. And it's all for him. It's all about staying ready. So you don't got to get ready. So I like what Pete's at. I like the maturation that he's experiencing in his career. And yeah, man, Pistol Pete Dobson. He used to be from New York, but he said, you know what? He went down to South Florida, so we've adopted him as our own here in South Florida. He's one of South Florida's very own now, so I'm definitely rooting for Pete. I think he's an exceptionally talented fighter, and someone that the boxing world will be familiar with very soon. So will he be world champion? I don't know, but I think that the opportunity will come, and when it comes, come hell or high water, he's going to definitely put people on notice as to who the hell Pistol Pete Dobson is from the Bronx, New York. So make of that what you will. That's my review on Pete Dobson. You guys, if anybody out there is fans of Pete Dobson or knows him, and I missed any facts, tidbits, information, drop it in the comments. Let me know what you guys think. Let me know about any other prospects you guys want me to review in the comments down below. Make sure you take the time to subscribe. And like I say in every single one of these videos, you can love me or you can hate me, but I'm just a kid from Dania. So until next time, take care, guys.